I was going to tell you about when I grew up in West Seneca, New York, you know. It's a suburb of Buffalo, you know, so there's a lot of white folks. And I was growing up there, and every morning in the backyard, I would watch my father, who is, he wasn't handy, you know, he had a saw, but kind of like how some women have like cookbooks, you know, for decoration only. He didn't know how to use a saw. But anyway, he'd connect the sprinkler, you know what I'm saying? And so he had a sprinkler, and at the same time, there would be a squirrel, and then there'd be a fly, and dead rodents. And in the kitchen was my mom, and she was pregnant, and she had a blender. So I'm gonna do all 6 of these impressions for you. This is a sprinkler. Yeah, thank you. This is a sprinkler. I was really good at that. And then there was a fly, you know, buzzing on the the glass window, you know, and he would go like this. And then he'd stop and he'd rub his wrists together. Have you ever seen a fly rub their wrists together? And then there was a squirrel, and he would he would eat a nut, you know, and he'd go like this, you know. Have you ever seen a squirrel do that? And the fly would be rubbing his wrists together, and then there would be a dead rodent, you know, and he'd be like this. You know, every rodent looked the same. So then my mom, she'd be using the blender, and I don't know if you've used a blender, but they have like all these different options on the blender, you know, and some of them are legit, like mix and stir, you know, and then some of them are like, they shouldn't be on the blender, like annihilate and destroy. So like I'll do 3 levels of a blender, you know, 2 like stir and mix, and then I'll do the 3rd one, which is like, you know, decapitate. So it'll be like this. And the blender, you know. Anyway, my poor mother, she was pregnant, you know? And that's like the grossest thing. Have you ever seen a pregnant woman sit down? It's disgusting. I don't know if there's a chair, I would show you, you know? But anyways, gross. So there's this, so that was kind of my childhood, you know, but now my new thing, because I love numbers, you know, and I love sports, you know? So like, when I go through the cashier to Albertsons, I'll, you know what I'll do? They'll give me the total and I'll tell them something about sports, you know? So this one time, I went through the cashier to Albertsons, and they're like, your total is 1978, you know? And I'm like, 1978? And all these things went through my head. I'm like, 1978, that's the year Dallas beat Denver in the Super Bowl 27-10. That was Super Bowl 12. The MVP was Harvey Martin and Randy White. There was 8 turnovers by the Broncos. There were 3 missed field goals by the Cowboys in the first half. That's the year the Yankees beat the Dodgers in the World Series for the 2nd straight year. That's the year the Canadians won the Stanley Cup for the 3rd straight year. That's the year that the Washington Bullets beat the Seattle Supersonics in the NBA Finals. That's when Affirm beat Aladar in the Triple Crown. Grease was the top movie in the box office. Jimmy Carter was the president. And Deer Hunter, starring Christopher Walken and Robert De Niro, was a big movie. So all these things. So anyway, I tell the cashier this, and she looks at me like Twizzlers are falling out of my nose. Like how do you know all this, you know? Because I like to know all that. But this one time I had this dude, you know, he was a guy, you know, and he was like 50, and like I bought some roses, you know, and these roses were going down the conveyor line, you know how they have conveyor lines at the Albertsons, you know, kind of like how they do it with people at airports. And so it was going down the conveyor thing, and then it got to the end of the conveyor thing, and the roses fell down, and all his water spilled all over, And he didn't say anything to me. Like, he wasn't like, I'm sorry, or, like, anything. So I didn't say anything. I just like, I'll go get different ones, So I got different roses, and then I got up to the line, and I paid him, and he's like, and he gave me my total, and then I was like, gonna tell him something, then I looked at him, and I was like, this dude looks like his hobbies are the same as, like, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, So I thought I'd just walk on by. I didn't tell him. And I'm not picking on 50-year-old dudes that work as cashiers at Albertsons, because, like, I live with my parents, and I'm 42, and I work in a call center. So, when that happens, something along the line must have went wrong. Because it's not like you're walking out of college at 24 and you're thinking, wouldn't it be great when I'm 42 if I move back in with my parents, in one bedroom? And then, like, and then wouldn't it be great, like, if I worked in a call center doing customer service? That would be my goal. So, yeah, it didn't. So, somewhere along the line didn't work out. But I like working at Zappos because, like, when somebody says, where do you work? And I say Zappos, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, because they do things for the community. And, like, they give you good benefits and stuff. But, like, it's not the same when you ask somebody, where do you work? And they're like, I work at the Shell station. You're not like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me more. What do you do? Like, what do you do when you get a $100 bill? Tell me. What happens when the gas pumps don't work? Just fill me in. I'm so excited to hear about your job. And then, like when they work at Albertsons, you're like, who puts all the ice in the ice box? Do you do that? Because you're so excited. But some jobs aren't so great. I worked at the cable company, doing door-to-door sales, and like sometimes people were stealing cable in the inner city, and I'm not picking on people, if they want to steal it, that's fine, but I caught them, and here's me, little white Brandon, in my early 20s, and I would cut them, and then I'd go to the front of their house, and I'd say, would you like to buy some cable? And they'd be like, what do you want? And then some girls would be like, if you turn me on, I'll do favors for you, and I was thinking, like, what will they do? Will they, like, cut my grass or, like, rake my leaves, And I was like, because I was naive, I didn't know about sex, So I was like, what favor do you want to do for me, And they're like, what do you mean favor? Like, I'll turn your cable on, fine. But anyway, I'll tell you one more thing, and that's, I use Notes. Do you use the Notes program on your phones, Yeah, you do? So Notes is good for reminders, like when you're going to talk to somebody the next day that you're not that interested in, and you're trying to remember, like, what should I say, Because they don't know about Super Bowl history like I do. Because if they said, like, I have children and I have a job, and I'd be, like, thinking, well, let's talk about Super Bowls, sometimes that conversation doesn't go so well, They're like, I have children, and you're like, well, what about Super Bowl 41 and the halftime show? And they're like, I'm not interested. Oh, how amazing that is that they're not interested in that. But, sometimes I'm not a good conversation maker. But the one thing I will always give is 100% of energy. And thank you so much. It was good to be with you. Oh, yeah, thank you. And I was going to tell you about the very first time there was applause, because at some point, there was no applause, and then at some point, there was applause. Do you know what I mean? And so the way I picture it is there were cavemen, okay? And then, like, there was a bully caveman, and then he got beat up, you know what I'm saying? He got beat up, and then, like, people were, like, thinking about what should we do to pay tribute to the person who stood up to the bully caveman. And then one guy was like, "Arr, arr, arr, arr." And then another guy was like, and then another lady, because she was wearing a pantsuit, she's like, yay! So they all put it together, and that's when applause started. So thank you. Have a good night.